Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building Scientific Communities and Networking Strategies, hosted by ASBMB Women in Biochemistry and Molecular Biology Committee. We are so glad you could join us today. I'm Meghna Gupta. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Chemical Physiology and Biochemistry at Oregon Health and Science University, and I'll be your moderator for this session today. Navigating networking at large conferences can feel intimidating, no matter your career stage. Today's session will explore practical ways to preparing for networking, making meaningful connections, and approach conversations with confidence and intention. Most importantly, you'll gain strategies to introduce yourself, find an in during discussions, follow up effectively, and build professional relationships that can last well beyond a single meeting. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we dive in. Feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box anytime. We'll answer as many as we can, but at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the ASBMB website. It is my pleasure now to introduce Melanie Cinch, Director of Graduate Student and Postdoctoral Success at the University of Connecticut. Melanie works with graduate students and postdocs to help them navigate professional development and career growth. She'll share her strategies for making networking approachable and actionable for scientists at any stage of their career. Melanie, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Megna. And I will share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. I am so delighted to be here and will be talking with you about how to build community and how to network strategically to further your own career goals. I will be using the chat throughout the session, so please post your answers in the chat. Or if you have any questions that come up, please post your questions in the Q&A box, as Megna mentioned. Before we get started, I would love to get to know more about you. So can you please post your current role in the chat and feel free to include your institution if you feel comfortable doing that. Okay, Rochester, first year PhD student, biomedical engineering consultant, staff scientist, New York, University of New Mexico, professor and chair, grad student, undergrad at William and Mary. Wonderful. So we have undergrads, graduate students, um, postdocs, faculty, directors, and scientific professionals. Wonderful. In advance of the ASBMB conference, I am hoping that you'll get some ideas on how you can approach networking to make it a little bit easier and more impactful during our session today. Okay. So why does attending conferences matter? So I'll ask you that question if you can post your answers in the chat. Why does it matter? What's the use of attending the ASBMB conference? Career development, sure. Help to build a strong network of peers and mentors, absolutely. Exposure to new ideas, connect with people who share your passion, research and progress, what's going on in the field, right? The opportunity to share work, develop soft skills, communicate research. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Learn new techniques. Sure. So we have access to collaborators, mentors, sponsors, employers, depending on what your career goals are. Certainly increased visibility for your work. And that can be not just if you're presenting a talk or a poster, but also just speaking with other scientists. You'll find out more about what's going on, the newest advances in research, and learn about different opportunities. And then I think someone had mentioned this, you'll be able to build your network and build a new professional community of people that you hadn't met before next week. Okay, great. So, what we'll talk about today is the definition of networking, how you can prepare before next week, how will you be able to create and deliver personal introductions that you can use in a variety of settings. We'll also tackle how to initiate and navigate conversations, especially at conferences. We'll discuss how to sustain networking relationships over time. And finally, we'll put your plan into action. So I'd like to start out by learning more about your thoughts about networking. So if you can put into the chat one word that you associate with networking, what do you think about when you hear that word? Just one word. Connection, support system, community, connection, stress, yes, of course, people, interacting, opportunity, growth, absolutely. Yep, formal interactions. It's funny, the word formal has come up a few times, and listening is a crucial skill, but networking can include formal interactions, but it can also be informal. And we'll talk about times when you might have an informal interaction with someone at the conference. Okay. So I like to define it this way. So connecting, a lot of you mentioned connections, to form mutually beneficial professional relationships. And the important words there, I would say, are mutually beneficial and relationships. So it's important to note that you have so much to offer other people, that you have something to offer in exchange during an interaction based on your own work, based on your life and your life experiences and what you're studying now, and referrals that you can make to other people. So really important. But it's essentially relationship building, right? So networking is relationship building. And I'm so excited for you for next week, for you to be able to connect with people. And I love this slogan that ASBMB is using, make it possible. So you are making possible growth and collaborations and possibly future employment. Think about all of those things when you're at the conference. So, in terms of preparing for the conference, what are some things you can do prior to traveling to the DC area? What are some things that you think you can do before going to the conference in order to prepare? And you can post those in the chat. Know the place, sure. Update your LinkedIn and your CV, absolutely. What else can you do? Figure out who will be there? Absolutely. If you have not been to a scientific conference in the past, you'll see you will have access to the conference app and be able to look at the program, mark the sessions you want to attend. Yes, absolutely, Megna. Make use of the ASBMB app, um, and practice a brief version of your research, right? So more casually what you work on, 100%. This is absolutely so useful. And you all are coming up with so many reasons that you could have given this talk, I think. But I just encourage you as you think about next week to start setting some clear goals for the meeting. So, for example, who do you want to meet? If you are a current graduate student, are you looking for a postdoc? If you're a current undergrad, are you looking into grad programs? If you're a PI, are you looking for collaborators? What kinds of connections are you seeking? And then ask yourself, what would make the conference a success for you personally? What would make it a success? Several of you mentioned doing targeted research. So, thinking about the conference program, thinking about who is going to be there, it's a nice way to connect with people in the field that you may not have met in the past. So, identifying people in your field and maybe creating a top 5 list of priority people to meet. And then make a plan. So, what can that plan include? You will be having access to lots of different types of events during the conference, but you can also plan to attend smaller sessions, get to know people. You can schedule a meeting or two in advance. So I would encourage you to draft emails and send them now. Today is Friday, and I know some of you are traveling next Friday to the DC area. So really, there are a lot of opportunities to connect. So a few of those at the meeting include coffee breaks. There are special events like the Women's Wellness Walk. That's a nice opportunity for Monday afternoon where you can maybe casually talk about your work. And maybe that could be one of the more informal situations that you encounter. There are also career development talks. So look through those. Think about whether you want to attend any of those career talks. Fireside chats. I have been to some of these, and they're really wonderful opportunities to get to know other professionals and other scientists. So the opportunity to meet an editor of JBC, that's great. So think about that. Careers in pharma, if you've ever thought about that, you can, maybe attend that kind of event. And yes, there is a women's networking reception on building scientific communities that last. That is on Saturday. And thank you, Carlette, for that. Absolutely, that's a special event that you have to have a ticket for. But also, there are welcome receptions that include all of the conference attendees. So I encourage you to think through how you can connect with people. Okay, so now that you are familiar with some of the programming that will take place, and you can certainly read through the app to find out other events, it's time to think through your own introduction. So, how can you prepare to meet people in the field in a way that works for you, in a way that feels comfortable, in a way that makes you feel confident? So, I would encourage you to, when you're meeting someone new, in addition to sharing who you are, your position, what you study, where you're from, these are typical items that we use in introductions, but you might also include one fun fact or a story about yourself. Because what you're doing is you're really trying to meet people and get to know people better. So think about what is most appropriate for the situation, but you might think about doing this. And if you're struggling to think about a fun fact to include, here are some examples that you could draw from. So, if I were to introduce myself, I could think about any of these things, maybe a favorite vacation or a pastime or activity that I take part in. I attended a scientific talk 2 days ago, and I actually met a person who was from Detroit, and we talked about the Detroit Lions. I like football, so we, had that in common. Or a life goal. One of my friends wants to visit every national park in the US, which is a big goal, but she's actually gone through several. So I think she's on her way. And then another friend, I was preparing for a contest at the University of Connecticut for graduate students called the 3 Minute Thesis. And I was thinking in terms of that kind of contest. And she said, no, I actually have a dog, and I entered my dog in a costume contest and he won. So, so there might be, you might have pets in common, you might have, something like that in common. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself as an example. But I could say, hello, my name is Melanie Cinch, and I currently serve as the Director of Graduate Student and Postdoctoral Success at the University of Connecticut. I have been working with graduate students and postdocs on their career and professional development for most of my life at different institutions, including research universities and research institutes. But a few years ago, I actually fulfilled a lifelong dream of taking my mother to the island of Sicily, where her family is from. And here is a picture of my mom making fresh pasta in Sicily. So we want to share more information about ourselves beyond our current positions because we'll have the opportunity to create more memorable interactions and really get to know people as people, beyond their science. So just wanted to ask you for a minute, if you were to think of a fun fact, what kind of a fun fact might you share if you're in line for a buffet or sitting waiting for one of the talks to begin? So you can post your fun fact in the chat. I love long distance running. Beth, I am sure you would find other runners at the meeting, possibly a running group that will get together during the meeting. My friends and I have climbed to the highest points in multiple US states over the summers. That's amazing. I've played over 12,000 levels of Candy Crush. That's incredible, Zoe. Oh my gosh. I think my fun fact would be you're a part-time ceramicist. That's amazing, Alicia. And Abhishek, a longtime scuba diver, tropical and in former life shipwreck diving. I mean, these are the kinds of things. Aren't these so memorable? These are so memorable that if you're talking with someone in a casual conversation, something like this might come up. So started playing piano again after many years. I know you will find other musicians, bird watchers, yes. These are the kinds of activities that make us human, right? And um, you have four older sisters, most of which were born in the summer, and you were born in January during a snowstorm. So you're the ice sister. I can't believe Isis. Yes, yes, yes. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. So thank you for that. But you really want to humanize the interaction. So just be yourself. Feel free to be yourself. Okay, so now if we're at the meeting, having thought about your introduction, let's consider how to navigate networking at ASBMB. So the first thing you need to do really is to find an in. So what does that mean? Find your way into a conversation, find a way of starting a conversation. One way might be to have a reason for talking to the person. So, what are some situations you might be in at the meeting or reasons you might have for talking with people? And you can post those in the chat. So, situations that might happen at the meeting or reasons you might have for talking to someone else at the meeting. Sitting at the same table? Absolutely. Yes. They're researching something that really interests you. Yes, definitely. I heard your talk recently at a different meeting. Absolutely. I read your latest paper. You might have a shared previous institution or a hometown. You might have a shared hobby, looking to get some feedback and suggestions in the field. Okay. So, what about finding some experience that you share? So, at the wellness walk, Carlette, absolutely. You could be at the wellness walk together. So, you're sharing an experience. I would encourage you to look for someone who looks like they don't know anyone. Because a lot of people, when they attend large scientific meetings, it can be hard to approach a big group. So look for someone who looks like they're alone and maybe introduce yourself and invite them to join you. So maybe there's a spot at our table, or you can even strike up a conversation. Is this your first time at ASBMB? You know, you can comment on a shared experience. So a lot of times the shared experience will be meals. So you could say, oh, wow, this line is so long at the buffet. Or, these appetizers are really good. Have you tried them? Just conversational ways to start. And you could also give yourself a reason, like volunteering to help with the conference. Um, so after finding an in, you want to prepare your introduction. So we've talked a little bit about introducing ourselves and adjusting the introduction based on the situation or the person that you're speaking with. So who you are, what you do, what you want or why them, and tailoring your introduction. So think about what you want to communicate about yourself and what you're interested in discussing. So, when describing who you are, again, you'll share your name and maybe your relevant position or affiliation. But think about what you'd like the other person to know about you and what you'd like to share with them, remembering that your goal is to work on establishing relationships. And to do this, you need to learn more about who they are. So, sharing about yourself can make space for them to share as well. Um, you might think about why you want to talk to them. So, how are you going to kick off the conversation? And this will likely be tied to the in that you just identified as your way to enter the conversation. But it's also a good idea to have some questions or topics that you can use to help keep the conversation going if needed. You might ask people if this is their first time in DC or Maryland, suggestions for what they have to do in DC. You might ask them what sessions they're planning to attend. So there are a lot of ways you can talk to strangers at a meeting. You might hear someone's talk and hope to chat more about it. So, as we've been discussing, you want to tailor what you're going to say and which of these elements you use in your introduction based on the specifics of the situation. So, I would also say keep it conversational. So, it's fine to talk about science, but part of the reason you want to be prepared to introduce yourself and have questions ready is to keep the conversation going so you can learn more about them. So it's fine, and it's sometimes better to talk about subjects outside of science, just to have a meaningful conversation regardless of the topic. You also want to make sure that it is a conversation. So you don't want to be talking at the person without giving them a chance to share or engage with you. But you also don't want it to feel like an interview where you have so many questions for them that it's not an exchange. Remember that definition that we had, it's connecting with people in a mutually beneficial way to build relationships. So you want it to be a back and forth. So while you're talking to someone, you might say, "Oh, I actually just read a paper on that same topic. Let me send it to you. What's your email?" So you also want to end your interactions on a high note. So you don't want to have things drag on too long for either of you, which is tough and it's hard to figure out when to stop a conversation. But when you get to a natural pause, it's time to employ your exit strategy. So I'll ask you another question for the chat. If you are having a conversation, how can you gracefully end that conversation if you're at the meeting? What are some things that you might say? Hope to see you at future meetings. Yes, definitely. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Sure. Hmm. When people don't like to hear about your research, what do you do? We can talk about that, but that was a great conversation. Can we connect on LinkedIn? And maybe I'll catch you sometime before the conference ends. Yes. Let me say hi to my friend over there. Yes, that's a good way to exit. I'm heading to the session. See you around. I enjoyed talking to you. Good luck. See you in a moment. Sure, you can absolutely say you're getting, you see your friend and you need to catch up with another person, or you need to refill your drink before the next session, or you need to make a phone call, right? So, looking forward to your talk or poster. Yes, absolutely. And be sure to thank them for the conversation. And if appropriate, and you mentioned this, ask them for their contact information or offer to give them yours. So, in whatever way that makes sense. Okay. So, staying in touch with people. What do you do following the conference? This is tough. So, maintaining your network, I get this question all the time from graduate students and postdocs. So, um, Miriam, let's meet again so that we can join more such innovative conferences. Yes. Keeping in touch with people. How do you do that? So, LinkedIn connections, absolutely. Yes. What are some other ways you can maintain your network? Email, absolutely. I have an account on Blue Sky that is just for professional connections. That's great, Alicia. Personal contact phone, IG. Using business cards, Daria, absolutely. If you have business cards, and a lot of students have them now, nowadays, I would definitely exchange business cards with someone. Occasional phone calls, following up on something about research that you talked about, yes. So the more specific you can be, the better. So, in general, I would say keep track of who you talk to. So definitely think about using the app in a way that works for you, use your phone in a way that works for you, and follow up on conversations. So, one of the examples that I just used was Oh, I just read a paper on that. Let me send you the paper. So that's a great way to follow up after the meeting. And another one I think is staying in touch with milestones. So if you're currently a PI, it could be you let someone know, once you've gotten tenure. If you are a student, you might let someone know if you've had a paper accepted. There are a lot of things, or if you've defended your dissertation, think about that because people that you meet and you talk to really, in most cases, would love to hear back from you and would love to hear about what's going on for you. So, sharing selfies and pictures on email as an icebreaker for post-meeting interaction. Yes, yes, definitely. So it was great to meet you last week. Here's a picture of a group of us at the meeting, anything like that. Just to help them remember you, remember the conversation. Absolutely. And I would also say, ask for referrals. So when you're talking with people, and I encourage all of my students and postdocs to do this, if they're meeting with professionals, if they're meeting with other scientists, regardless of the situation, they might close the conversation by asking, "Well, I really enjoyed hearing more about your work. Is there anyone else you might suggest I talk to?" Because that is a great way to meet more scientists and more people. So, how do you plan to put your plan into action? So, as we start to think about our next steps before the conference, can you put in the chat any conference events you want to attend, what kind of people you'd like to reach out to, or an email that you intend to send before next week? To a potential collaborator. Hmm. What other steps will you take before the conference? Looking for a PI? Okay. Setting up meetings ahead of time with people of interest? Absolutely. I have done that with actually one of the keynote speakers who's super busy, but I emailed in advance of the meeting and we just had a coffee, and the coffee was quick, but it was fantastic. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Take a look at the attendees list and reach out to two people who are doing similar research. Absolutely, Isis. And Megna, is there a bulletin board or a post-it board of some kind on the app where people can post like, I'm going for a run tomorrow morning or anything like that, updates?
I think definitely there's a way of communicating with fellow attendees, but I've yet to explore that option in the app, but the app seems very useful. I use it for all the big conferences every year, and definitely like you can like mark the sessions and as well as like all the networking stuff so that you know what your prior commitments are. And I totally agree with you. Like coffee seems much less of a commitment for a very busy PI or a very busy researcher. So they may say yes to a coffee if they are not able to, find time for lunch or dinner.
That's right. That's right. So I have a couple more questions for um, the attendees today. If you would like to speak to a very famous PI, someone maybe who has a plenary talk or someone whose talk you've seen who's usually surrounded by other people. What if you saw that person in the buffet line? What would you do? Someone that you really want to connect with and talk to. Usually start with their latest work that I've read. Yes, absolutely. Your talk today was fantastic. I was wondering if I could ask you a quick question. Sure. You might ask if you can join them at their table. If they're carrying their food away, um, you might say, I really enjoyed your talk. Might I be able to join you today? Most PIs that I've talked to, and people in the scientific community in general, I will say, are so helpful and willing to talk and want to share more about their research, but they want to get to know other people. It was a nice talk. I'm working on a related topic. Absolutely, Wendy. Yep. hmm So I have a scenario number two for you now. What if you are at a poster session and you are trying to break in to a group that's at a poster? What would you do? What would you say? All right, let me ask it another way. If anyone on the call is giving a poster, what would you do in advance of the meeting regarding people attending your poster? Yep, yep, Megna. Wait a couple of minutes before diving in to read the room and then follow up with a question or appreciation along the lines. Megna, what do you mean by read the room?
Like it will be a little difficult to get really in the conversation if you abruptly kind of say something. So I try to at least understand where the conversation is at before I can pitch in or try to be part of that conversation.
Absolutely. Sure. So much of, I think we've talked a little bit about this, but maybe not enough. So much of networking is about listening, right? So if you're near a group that's at a poster, you might just do exactly as Megna said and listen for a little bit before you try to break into the conversation. So is the presenter halfway through their talk? Are they nearing the end? Are they talking about baseball? What's going on in the conversation? And then you can try to enter the conversation. Um, but if you are presenting a poster, what might you do in advance of the meeting or while you're at the meeting? Prepare a short pitch about my research. Yes. General information. So I just went to a science talk 2 days ago, and one of the PIs said, I really like it when students and postdocs invite me to their posters. I really like it when they invite me to stop by. So if you're meeting with anyone, if you're sitting at a table, and it doesn't have to be just PIs, it could be other grad students, it could be other undergrads, right? So if you're presenting a poster, you might just say, hey, it'd be great if you stop by my poster session. I'm presenting tomorrow at 2, you know? People love invitations like that, and it's more likely that you'd be having visitors then, give them their poster number. Yep. Peer networking and mentoring is very powerful. Yes. So inviting people at your table, just let them know I'm number 62 and I'll be presenting tomorrow afternoon. Feel free to stop by. That will help you from standing alone at your poster and wishing that someone would stop by. So, really, it's a great idea to invite other people to your presentations. We still do that. So when I attend conferences, I still will tell my friends or new people I meet, oh, I'm actually presenting on a similar topic tomorrow morning, or I hope you can make it to my talk. Anytime you get a chance to invite someone to see you, that would be great. Meghna, can you talk a little bit more about why peer mentoring is so important?
I personally feel sometimes like there could be a barrier if there is a really senior PI and you're trying to talk to them, and also the imposter syndrome kicks in when you're trying to talk to somebody senior, and there is much less barrier when you are like talking to a peer, say another grad student or another postdoc. And I've realized that at least in my so far whatever the career is, that I have been certainly helped a lot by my peers because of that low barrier. So you can ask them for a reagent. Oh, I really like the plasmid you have used in your research. Can I get like, so they may take permission from their PI, but the barrier is certainly low. And sometimes the senior PIs are really busy. So, so they may not have time to answer to all such small requests, but it could be it could be more beneficial if you can get reagents or protocols, or like just support, some ask somebody to read your paper who are working on like similar area, like who are your peer. And I think they it also leads to long-term connections, because you may be like when you are more senior, like you can still be like reminded of that, oh, we developed this connection and this person helped me at that time, or something like that. And also, Melanie, I think we can invite questions now in the Q&A session.
Sure, sure. That is my last slide. So remember that you're building relationships, and I really hope you enjoy the conference. So I would love to take your questions now.
So please feel free to type in the Q&A box, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A box very closely. So I'll keep reading the questions to Melanie. And in the meantime, maybe like while people are typing in, I can ask like, what are some effective strategies for like making meaningful connections? I know you talked about like how to make an impact, like share some personal, your hobby or like something like that that sticks to somebody's mind, that okay, I know this person, like. But also there is a downside of being like a relatively junior person,
Mhm,
because I think people at future meetings remember impact. Oh, this person published a beautiful paper and all, but not all career stages people are accomplishing that like on a regular basis. So for example, if you met somebody this time, you followed up an email but didn't get an enthusiastic response. Next
mhm.
year, if you meet them at ASBMB, what will be like your strategy to remind them that, oh, we made that connection at that time? I don't know, just curious, I think.
Yes, yes, it's a great question. And I think following up with people, if you can, before the meeting is really helpful. But if you know they're at the meeting and you see them maybe at one of the talks, approaching them and reminding them, oh, it was so nice to meet you at the last meeting. And I'm now a junior in my program at the University of Texas, and I would love to continue hearing about your research. One of the things about networking that you can always fall back on if you're a more junior person and you're trying to meet with a more senior person is always ask them about themselves. So ask about their research, ask about what's going on, and don't forget that, as we said at the beginning, networking is mutually beneficial, right? So there might be some protocol or some um, technique or equipment that, an undergraduate is using that they hadn't thought about, using for an experiment. And you can always try to contribute in whatever way you can based on your knowledge, because, you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, Megna, and I think that phenomenon is so ever present in science in general, in graduate work, and with women in science. And I think it's important for you to know you have something to offer, no matter what stage you're at. You always have something to offer the conversation. So, yes.
So I'll read like a couple of questions from Q&A. So Zoe asks, when presenting a poster and someone walks by, how do I appropriately address them and ask them if they want to hear about my research?
Sure. Zoe, it's a really good question. And I think you can start by asking about the meeting, right? You can ask, how have you been enjoying the meeting so far? And they might say, oh, it was good. I really liked today's keynote, or whatever, they might be talking about. And then you can, again, to engage with people, always think about learning more about them. So asking about their role, what institution they're from, asking about their research. And then there might be a tie-in to your poster, right? So think about that. Think about how you can engage with a person first to start a conversation, and then eventually get around to, because the conversation will eventually come back around to, oh, well, what are you working on? Oh, well, actually, here on my poster, I can show you. And I think I've seen that happen very well. So,
Okay,
uh,
the next question we have is, could you suggest something to connect with industries?
yes. So, again, good question. With scientific meetings, a lot of times with the students I work with and the postdocs, they don't always think about talking to the vendors. And it could be that the vendors are very well connected with people in industry. And so I would definitely visit all of the career fairs, the opportunities you have to meet with scientific professionals. But also, there's a tip that I have for using LinkedIn, and we have not talked that much about LinkedIn, but on LinkedIn, you can actually look up your institution, because your institution will have a LinkedIn page. So, for example, if I look up University of Connecticut on LinkedIn, there's a page that comes up, and there's a tab on the page called Alumni. And if you click on that tab, it shows thousands of alumni from your institution. And so you have an automatic connection with them because you're involved in the same institution. And you can enter a keyword in that search bar for all of the alumni. So you might enter something like Novo Nordisk, or something, like Boehringer Ingelheim, and you might be looking for a specific company or organization, and it will pull up all of those alumni who are at that organization. So that's one way you can use LinkedIn, for example.
We
Um,
have another question, like Wendy asks, how asking for help for a specific technical activity or protocol.
okay, so how to ask for help with a specific technical activity or protocol. Um, Wendy, I think it might be good for you in that situation to take someone's, or ask for someone's contact information, um, or email, and ask if you can reach out after the meeting, right? Because you might even find someone who can help you with a specific protocol at the meeting. And you might just ask, might I be able to contact you in the next few weeks so we can set up a Zoom meeting to talk about the protocol? So I would try to get their contact information if you can, because I think that might help you to reconnect with them.
Okay. The next question we have is, how do you ask the principal investigator about training opportunities? It's not a formal study, but rather a way to get involved in a formal project while you are training. For example, do you mention your equipment deficiencies?
Okay, so asking the PI about training opportunities, so not a postdoc. I'm not sure what you mean about training opportunities, but rather a way to get involved in a formal project while you're training. So maybe looking for a collaborator, um, or if you want to be trained on specific equipment, if that is more the question, I would say the same that I just responded about contacting someone who might be working with a specific protocol to exchange information with that PI so that you can get back in touch via email.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
The next question is, if you aren't presenting anything at this meeting or conference, what would it be appropriate to offer to show your research on your tablet or PC?
Depends on the situation, right? So maybe if you're standing in the buffet line, it might be hard to do that. But if you're sitting at a table and say the meal has ended and you're waiting for the next plenary session, you might have more time to pull out your tablet or your PC. But again, I would say base it on the person's interest and the way that the conversation is going. If they seem really interested and they want to hear more and they want to see more, then you might say, oh, actually, I have this information, these data on my computer. Would you mind if I pulled it up? So, really, back to Megna's phrase of reading the room. I know not everyone knows that phrase, but it means really try to pay attention to what's going on. And if you can see that this person is interested in your work, I would keep going. Yeah.
Okay, and the next question we have from Ruby is, if I want to use any of their facility, will it be the right place to ask that?
So Ruby, if you are interested in using their facilities, it could be, again, it depends on the conversation, but it could be maybe, you might be able to ask, is it ever possible for people from outside of your institution to use that facility? Are you talking about a core? Are you talking about, what are you talking about? And is it possible? And they may be able to tell you that right away, even if you're just standing at the coffee break, they might be able to say, well, actually, no, that facility is restricted, or, you might be able to find out right away. But that might be appropriate to ask. Yeah.
Uh, so another question is, you mention your equipment deficiencies, for example, what you want to do but don't have necessary resources. I'm not sure I understand the question fully, but Melanie.
So, what you want to do, but don't have the necessary resources. Um,
So what I'm assuming is that there is a research plan in place, but they
mhm.
don't have like everything they need to be able to push it to the finish line. That's what.
Yeah, and it could be, yes, it could be that you need help and you need to collaborate in order to get some part of your work done. And I think exploring collaboration opportunities is a perfect way to use a scientific meeting, right? So try to find someone who's doing research that is very close to yours, that might have some equipment that you or resource that you do not have access to, and try to connect with them before the conference if possible. And then at the conference, you might be able to even text them on the app. So definitely be in touch with them.
Okay. So one of the last questions in the Q&A box so far is, how do you approach someone for postdoc opportunity, even though let's say you don't have a similar research ongoing currently?
Okay, so if you're looking to change fields for your postdoc, that's can be common. That has happened for sure. And I would say, again, express an interest in their work. So, hearing more about what they're working on and considering different research questions that you might have about what they're working on. You might just explore that with them and then ask, um, are there any training opportunities in your lab currently? I'm finishing up my PhD this semester, and I wonder, I'm starting to look at postdocs, and I'd like to switch gears a little bit. I wonder if you will be looking for postdocs in the next, 6 months or so.
So, Melanie, I have one question since we have read all through Q&A. So we have talked about what to do. Do you have any suggestions what not to do? So basically, common mistakes to avoid while networking.
Yes, I would say don't talk about yourself the whole time. So, as we've said many times, express an interest in the other person, um, but also be yourself. Don't think that you have to be a different person. Just be natural and, keep your conversations um, friendly and um, express interest in the other person. I will also say I have had some students and postdocs ask for jobs. Um, the tough thing about asking for a job is, and I don't mean postdocs actually in this case, I mean full-time jobs like maybe a faculty role or a job in industry. The tough thing about asking for a job is if there's no opportunity at that organization or institute, it's hard to recover from that conversation. So it's hard to get the conversation going again. If the answer is no, we're not hiring, it's hard to get it back. So, I would say more beneficial might be to ask if you can keep in touch and get that person's email and then follow up with them at another time.
So since we are very close to the finish line of the
Yes.
event, so I want to ask you if you have any closing remarks, like on based on the discussion we have had here today.
Yes, definitely enjoy yourself. It will be so much fun and exciting to hear about new research and to meet other people. It really can be so fun. So even if you're an introvert, I know a couple of you have put in the chat that you're more introverted. Enjoy yourself. Try to, talk with one person, give yourself a chance at smaller sessions or at a coffee. Again, I would say try to approach someone who looks like they're alone to help them get through the meeting. But there is someone who came to the meeting, Ed Eisenstein, who is president-elect, who is looking forward to meeting anyone that wants to come up and introduce themselves. What a great offer. Thank you, Ed. Because Ed says, I'd love to meet you and get to know you, right? That's true. That's true for scientists in general. That's true for senior scientists. Really, they want to meet the junior scientists and up and coming people in the field. So be yourself and enjoy yourself.
That's a wonderful thought, and I'm sure like our attendees have like a lot of take home messages from this conversation. And thank you again, Melanie, for sharing your insights. And thanks to all of our participants today for this engaging session. And really appreciate you being active on the chat and Q&A. We hope you leave feeling more confident and prepared to make meaningful connections at upcoming conferences and beyond. On behalf of Women in Biochemistry and Molecular Biology Committee and ASBMB, we'll look forward to seeing you at 2026 annual meeting and at future events. Thank you so much.